Join me today as we are talking from Esther chapter 8 in our Bible study, from Hadassah to Esther, how those people who were condemned to die were giving their life and fight back. Doesn't this sound like revival to you? So don't go anywhere and we will be talking more about this. Welcome to the Voicer podcast. Today we are studying the book of Esther from chapter 8. And I'm so thankful you are joining today with me as I'm very excited to go into this chapter and just see what we are to do with the breakthrough that God has started to do in our life as we are Esther's following his plan. So this is the good part of the book. We are moving. We in the last episode we saw that God, the King, started to move on our behalf as we're just preparing a banquet for Him in our lives. So the book of Esther was a book to the Jews to remind them of the Feast of Purim and why they needed to celebrate it. And it was a very detailed account of why Purim was to be celebrated and how it was to be celebrated. And so the Old Testament books were not books for the Gentiles. They were not books for Assyrians or Philistines or Moabites or Amalekites, but they were book for the Jewish people to remind themselves of their history and their faith. And so this book, people even didn't have books at that time, but it was read to them and the stories were told to them by scribes and it was read to them in the temple. So we need to understand that for Jews, this book is a story why they need to celebrate Purim. But for us Christians who maybe are not celebrating Jewish festivals, you can celebrate if you want to, but many are not celebrating those festivals. It's a story how to live, how to be an Esther, and how to live the new covenant life with connection to the God who is on the background directing your life. And that's how God is many times in our life, the force behind our life, Holy Spirit guiding us. So chapter 8 takes the victory of Esther to another level. Haman, the source of the plot of the enemy, had been destroyed. But now they needed to take the victory to another level and not just stay there that their personal Haman was out of their backs. And by this point, the enemy was sorry that he ever bothered you. By this point, there is nothing good coming for him. But you have the breakthrough, and the reason you have the breakthrough is for you to be a representative and say how things should go from this on. Isn't that wonderful? And who should benefit from this victory first? So let's read from chapter 8, verse 1, 2, and then verse 15. On that same day, King Xerxes gave the property of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, to Queen Esther. Then Mordecai was brought before the king, for Esther had told the king how they were related. The king took off his signet ring, which he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed Mordecai to be in charge of Haman's property. And then even more about Mordecai in verse 15. Then Mordecai left the king's presence wearing the royal robe of blue and white, the great crown of gold, and outer cloak of fine line and purple, and the people of Susa celebrated the new decree. So, first, the breakthrough that you have is supposed to touch your relatives. It's supposed to touch anyone closest to you. It's supposed to reward those who have been faithful, those who have been acting honorably, those who have been doing right. And this is a great principle in the Bible, rewarding those who have been doing right all along. Because Mordecai was condemned to die. He was in sackcloth and ashes with all the other Jews. He was condemned to die, but now he was rewarded and exalted to the leading position in the kingdom. He was restored. He was restored to life. And this restoration started from Esther's immediate circle, from his relatives and from his family. And in our Finnish Bible, this word restore is translated to God turning our destiny around. So in Zechariah 9:12 it says, return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Even now I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. So this restoration, after you have a breakthrough, it flows into your family and those who are around you first. And then we encounter another problem in this chapter, which is that the decree of the king was irrevocable, and you couldn't do anything to it, but you have to figure out another way to save the Jews. So now, the irrevocable law in this chapter talks about things that cannot be turned anymore in our lives. So you may have things that have happened and things have been destroyed, and you just cannot turn it around anymore. It's impossible. They are dead, they are gone, time has passed, something has happened. So what is the message of this situation to us when there is irrevocable things happened in our lives? In Joseph's life in the book of Genesis, it says that what the enemy meant for evil, God turns into good. And that's what we see here happening, because God has his ways of turning those things that are irrevocable, that you cannot do anything about, into testimonies and into force of empowerment to others. And that's the thing what he does, like in Joseph's life, like in Esther's life. And the interesting thing is that the day chosen for the destruction of the Jews, it wasn't the previous day, but it was that day that was chosen for the destruction of Jews by Haman, was the day that they chose for the victory and for the fight of the Jews. So in verse 11 it says, the king's decree gave the Jews in every city authority to unite to defend their lives. They were allowed to kill, slaughter, and annihilate anyone of any nationality or province who might attack them or their children and wives, and to take the property of their enemies. And the day chosen for this event throughout all the province of King Xerxes was March 7th of the next year. So that day where the enemy was planning to destroy you is the day God will turn it around. And it will be an empowerment to other people. So this verse is just a wonderful verse, what happened to the Jews as the decree that Esther and Mordecai did, as they now had the power to do things. They did, and they empowered other Jews to fight against their enemies. It was a decree that was sent to all the provinces. And so what could the Jews now do? The first decree was in order, but the second decree also, the law that they could now fight was in motion too. So in the verse 11 says they had authority to fight, to defend themselves, to attack and destroy, to take the property of their enemies. So basically they were armed with every possible weapon they could use. But what does this mean to you and me? We may think that after our breakthrough, okay, now life is going to be easy. Now everything is going to go smoothly. But that's not the case in Christianity. After your breakthrough, you are not supposed to expect an easy life, but you are on a race to run. And you are here, you have the authority like Esther and Mordecai had now, but you are to do something with that victory, and with joy and gladness, as verse 16 in chapter 8 says that Jews were joyful and glad. You will have the joy and gladness, but you are supposed to do something with that victory. So Jesus said in John 16:33, I have told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. So the victory is ours. And this chapter just gives the picture, the whole chapter 8 in the book of Esther gives a picture of the dominion that Christians have, of the power we have. even though things are still happening in our lives and we are not in the perfect peace on this earth, that will happen when Jesus comes. But until that, we will have different kind of things trying to disturb our lives. And then this second decree was sent in the book of Esther in chapter 8, in verse 13. It was sent by swift messengers to all across the area. So this is how the news of your breakthrough, when God gives you breakthrough, what happens? It spreads swiftly. It spreads like wildfire. It spreads to others because Esther caused others to have their fight back and to have to revive their fight. This is what Esther did with the breakthrough that she had. She caused people destined to die to revive and fight back by this new decree. So we might say that when is God bringing revival to my family? When will my family be saved? But as you look at this story, revival was caused by Esther being an Esther. This is a picture of revival. It may be just a revival around you and in your family, but it can also be a revival, a nationwide, a city-wide revival, if many people start to become Esthers. If many people start to walk the road of Esther, it can be a big, wide revival. Because revival is that life comes back to those who were half dead and condemned to die, and life and fight comes back to those people. So people who were in survival mode, Christians who were in survival mode, just trying to survive the evil things in their lives, are now given life and fight, and they are kicking and fighting again. So this is what happens. This is what revival does. And this, in verse 15, we saw that Mordecai walked with royal robes, with the royal authority. He had the clothes, he had the signet ring, which means that he was in charge in this situation. He was in a new position, and there was still going to be a fight, but it was a fight from another position totally. And this all, the Mordecai's new position, was caused by Hadassah transforming to Esther. This revival, this new fight around her, was caused by Hadassah choosing to transform to an Esther. So our choice to be an Esther can spark revival around us. So our choice to be an Esther can spark revival around us. Let's just say Selah to that. So we notice in the story that in chapter 8, the king no longer did much, but Mordecai and Esther were doing the work. They had the power, they had the delegated authority to do things. The king was watching and agreeing, but he wasn't like lazy, no. But it was just that the king had nothing else to do because he had already destroyed Haman. So now it was Esther and Mordecai's job to destroy darkness all around and give people opportunity to fight against darkness. So it was like the king saying, "You've got this, Esther. You've got this, Esther." So the victory continues in this chapter. And let's read from verses 15 to 17. Let's read from verse 16 forward. The Jews were filled with joy and gladness and were honored everywhere. In every province and city where the king's decree arrived, the Jews rejoiced and had a great celebration and declared a public festival and holiday. And many of the people of the land became Jews themselves, for they feared what the Jews might do to them. I think this sounds a lot like what verse in Acts says. Let's read from Acts chapter 5 and verse 12 to 14. The apostles performed many signs and wonders among the people, and all the believers used to meet together in Solomon's colonnade. No one else dared to no one else dared to join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. Nevertheless, more and more men and women believed in the Lord and were added to their numbers. So this is a picture of revival in the book of Esther, what happens after our breakthrough and even an awakening among those who were not Jews, among those who were pagans. They wanted to join the Jews. They wanted to come. And again, why this awakening happened? You can read it for yourself from the book. It happened by Hadassah being willing to be transformed into an Esther. And this caused the revival. So, if there are many Hadassahs who want to be transformed into an Esther, the revival will be a great one. But if you only choose are one person and choose to be transformed, it can be your family wide or your block or your workplace wide revival and awakening to those who don't know our wonderful God who is fighting for us. So if we Christians don't want to do anything, want to be passive, which I don't believe you want to be. I believe you want to be the Esther who wants to do the greater works that Jesus says we are going to do. Then if we want to do anything, if we don't want to do anything, then we cannot step into this Esther life. But if we want to do, and we are prepared to, the fact that when God promotes us, he gives us more to do, more responsibility, as Esther was given as she was transformed to Hadassah. She had a great responsibility in this chapter to give life to others and to empower them to fight. So you must be prepared for, if you are transforming from Hadassah to Esther, you must be prepared to do more and to have more responsibility from God and to give more to others and empower others to be victorious people. So God was, of course, causing this revival, but you can see Esther and Haman's part in it. You can see what was God's part and what was Esther's part. And this victory of Esther's touched everybody around her. It touched her relatives. It gave authority to others to fight, courage and weapons to the Jews, and it even drew people to become Jews because those who were destined to die were revived and given new hope. So my choice and your choice to become Esther's can spark a revival around us. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for being part of this Bible study. And you can go and read the notes from this episode from our website, voicer.fi, and subscribe to this podcast so you can know when the next episode comes out. Also, you can read my new book, A Clash of Book and Blade. And now it is in Finnish, Aikakirja ja pimeyden hyökkäys. And you can go to Amazon and buy it in Finnish. This is wonderful for my Finnish listeners. So now you can buy it and you can give it to your friends and read it and know more about the battle that's going in the unseen realm. Join me again next time as we are ending this Bible study from Hadassah to Esther, becoming an Esther for this generation, and we are learning from chapter 9 how our things can turn around and we can be empowered to be those victorious Christians God wants us to be.